Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Buckle up, because what happened that night wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the start of something in me I never knew existed. She hurled the words across the table, like I was a pest that had crawled into her life. "Don't touch me. You look ridiculous." The waiter froze. A spoon chimed against a glass. Someone actually whispered, "Oh my God." And I just sat there, blinking, my hands still suspended where hers had been seconds before. It was her company's annual dinner. Some awards night on a rooftop that served foods I couldn't name, and champagne that tasted like sour apologies. And Rosalind, she looked stunning in that emerald dress. I thought we were in for a nice evening. I really believed it. But the moment I reached for her hand, she turned me into a spectacle. Loud, public, cruel. My voice shook as I stood, but the words came out steady. "You're not worth this." Then I walked away. No dramatic slam, no cinematic pause. I just left and let the elevator close on her stunned face. But I didn't go home. I went where I shouldn't have gone. Not to another woman, to her other phone. Yeah, the one I wasn't supposed to know about. Months earlier I'd noticed her phone buzzing at night, but the screen never lit. Only vibrations, always at 11:08 p.m. I asked once and she laughed it off, said it was a wellness reminder. Because nothing screams self-care like slipping into the bathroom every night and coming back looking like you swallowed battery acid. I let it go because I'm Ellis. I let things slide. I give people room. I don't ask enough questions. That's always been my curse. But after she humiliated me like that, something in me cracked open. I drove straight to her studio. I had the code. She'd forgotten I knew it. I knew where she hid the spare phone. She'd used it when we traveled abroad last year and hadn't tucked it away properly. The charger was still in the top drawer beneath those unused sketchbooks she claimed were for vision journaling. I powered it up. My hands were sweating so badly, I could barely type the passcode. Her birthday reversed. It unlocked on the first try, and what I saw, I'll never forget the first message that popped up. "Grant can't wait until you're finally rid of him. Is dead weight." There were hundreds more. Photos, videos, voice memos, jokes at my expense, plans that had me erased. Her calling me the emotionally fragile roommate, him calling me a barnacle. They even used code names for when they wanted to talk about me. I was Dusty. Dusty, not even a person, just something you wipe away when you're done pretending it mattered. That's when it hit me. She wasn't merely done with loving me. She'd rewritten me into someone unlovable. And worst of all, I'd let her. I didn't leave the studio straight away. I sat there amid that over-decorated space of pastel candles and cheesy motivational prints while the second phone kept lighting up, buzzing again and again. Grant. 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 It felt like the device itself was mocking me. He was texting her while I held the proof of everything she thought I'd never find. I know I should have been enraged, furious even. But in that instant all I felt was humiliation, a hollow, sinking sadness that settled into my bones. I thought I had stability in that marriage. Not perfect, not thrilling, but safe. Loving her unconditionally, forgiving the distance, the sarcasm, the late nights, the work emergencies. I thought it counted for something. Turns out it only made me easier to replace. She called later that night. I didn't pick up. She messaged around 2:11 a.m. "Where are you?" Then, "I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. You made it weird." That line broke me. You made it weird, as if I were the one at fault. Like I was overreacting to public humiliation, and being secretly replaced by a man who called me a barnacle. I didn't reply. Not to play mind games, but because I didn't know who I was supposed to be anymore. The version she helped mold, quiet, careful, constantly apologizing, couldn't handle this. And the version I needed to become, I wasn't sure he existed yet. By morning I read every message. The betrayal wasn't new. It stretched back at least 8 months. Early exchanges were coy and coded, but by December they were blatant. Weekend plans, business trips together. One message read, "He thinks you're with your sister. I love how easy this is." That was the weekend I sent her flowers. She told me they never arrived. I remember calling the florist and arguing. They said it was signed for. Now I know who signed. The worst part was how they mocked me. My anxiety, my awkwardness became entertainment. There was even a meme she made with my face and the caption, When you realize your husband is just a houseplant with Wi-Fi. She sent it to Grant. He replied with 3 laughing emojis and, "Your trophy for endurance." I wish I could say I got up, deleted everything, and walked away with quiet dignity. But I collapsed right there on her meditation rug, while betrayal flickered on the screen beside me. I cried until I couldn't breathe. I was 41 on a yoga mat in a room scented with lavender and lies, sobbing like a boy who'd just learned he'd never be enough. Eventually I rose. I wiped my face. I closed the phone. And I decided I wasn't going to fight for her anymore, but I would make her see what it looked like when the quiet, forgettable husband stopped being quiet and stopped forgetting. The next time she saw me, she wouldn't be ready. By Saturday my phone blew up. Texts, missed calls, voicemails beginning with fake concern and spiraling into irritation. "Ellis, can you stop being dramatic and just talk to me?" She snapped in one message as if I'd caused the scene. As if I'd broken 12 years of marriage simply by reaching for her hand. I didn't respond. Instead I did something wildly unlike me. I told the truth to someone who mattered. I went to my sister's house. I hadn't spoken to Mallory in months. We drifted after she accused Rosalind of treating people like temporary props. Back then I defended Rosalind like a fool. But when Mallory opened the door she hugged me before I could say a word, like she already knew. Maybe she did. My face must have said everything. I told her everything. The dinner, the thread, the spare phone. Her expression shifted from sympathy to disgust to a quiet kind of rage. She sat with me, listened without interruption, without pity. "Ellis," she said after a long pause, "I don't think you realize this, but she's been rewriting the story of your life without you." That line landed hard. She was right. Rosalind wasn't just cheating. She'd been reframing me, turning me into a prop in her narrative. The awkward husband, the safe option, the joke. I wasn't a man in her story anymore. I was the obstacle she needed to discard before starting her real life. So I did something even more uncharacteristic. I took Mallory's advice. That evening, while Rosalind spammed my phone with apologies and "Are you okay?" texts, I returned home. Not to talk, but to gather what I needed. She wasn't there. Perfect. I moved through our condo like a stranger. Everything felt familiar and wrong. The throw pillows, the fake marble dining table she insisted we buy for looks, the wedding photo in the hallway. All I could see was how desperately I'd clung to something only I was holding. I packed 2 bags. Not mine, hers. The little things she'd need if she planned to stay at his place. Her favorite skincare set, the expensive routine she always traveled with, her laptop, charger. I tucked them into the designer overnight bag she bought last Christmas and said was too beautiful to use. I left it on the front step beside a small envelope. Inside, a single printed line. "You made your choice. Here's everything you'll need to live with it." I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't throwing her out. I wasn't locking her out. I was stepping away. And before I left I did one more thing. I opened her work laptop. The one she always warned me not to touch because the files were sensitive. I didn't snoop. I opened a blank document and typed one sentence. "Grant doesn't know what I know." Then I shut the lid and walked out, locking the door behind me. Not to hurt her, not to punish her, but because I was done being the background in my own life. That night I turned off my phone. The next morning she saw everything. I turned my phone back on just before noon. 92 messages, 17 missed calls, 6 voicemails, all from Rosalind. I didn't open any. I just stared at the screen while sipping black coffee in Mallory's kitchen, wondering how long it would take for panic to overtake arrogance. That cryptic line about Grant not knowing what I knew wasn't a bluff. It was bait. And she took it. 2 hours later she showed up. Not at our condo, at Mallory's. I don't know how she found me. Maybe she tracked my phone before I switched it off. Maybe she guessed. Or maybe she just knew I had no one else to go to. When I saw her car outside my whole body locked up. I wasn't ready to face her, but Mallory was. She went outside before I could stop her. I watched through the blinds as my sister stood with her arms folded while Rosalind begged, actually begged, to talk to me. Mallory didn't budge. She told her I wasn't coming out and that she should go home, that I'd contact her if I ever felt the need. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You can't scream in his face in public, cheat in private, and then expect an invitation to explain yourself. That's not how this works. Rosalind didn't like that. I couldn't hear her reply, but I could see it. Flailing hands, narrowed eyes, the way her lips moved fast and sharp as if trying to carve away whatever remained of her story. Eventually she got back in her car, and peeled out of the driveway, like she was trying to leave the version of herself behind. That night I finally listened to one voicemail. Not from her, from Grant. It wasn't meant for me. It was a message she'd left him, but somehow it landed in my inbox. Or maybe she panicked and hit the wrong contact. Or maybe she wanted to be caught. Either way, it was chaos. Her voice frantic and breathless. You need to delete the messages. All of them. Now he saw the second phone. I don't know what he's planning, but he's not acting like himself. He's scaring me. This isn't him. You said this would be simple. It's not. It's not. I played it 5 times, not because I enjoyed it, but to figure out which part of that scramble she believed. Had she feared I would burn her life down? Did she think I was unstable? Or did she finally understand that the man she mocked into silence could walk away without a scene? She had underestimated me for too long. Now she didn't know who she was dealing with. Later that night I received another message, from an unknown number. Ellis, I think you and I should talk privately. No drama, just clarity. Grant. Clarity. I laughed. This man slept with my wife, insulted me behind my back, called me dead weight, and now wanted a calm, civil conversation. I didn't reply, but I forwarded the message to Rosalind. No words, just the screenshot. 3 minutes later she called. I answered and said only, "You were right. I'm not acting like myself. You should be scared of what I've become." Then I hung up. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. For the first time in years I was completely awake. Every word they'd said behind my back became fuel. Every humiliating moment at that dinner was sharpened into something I could hold. I wasn't numb anymore. I was focused, clear. Then came a knock. Not a text, not another call, a knock. Mullery was already at work, so I opened the door myself, and there he was, Grant, in a sleek suit, smelling of high-end cologne and entitlement. He planted himself there as if my being uncomfortable was guaranteed. Like his presence alone would make me shrink. That used to be true. Not anymore, Ellis, he said, as casual as old acquaintances grabbing brunch. Can we talk? I didn't reply. I stepped aside and let him in. Partly because I wanted to see the act he'd rehearsed, and partly because I wanted to watch what he looked like when I refused to be scared. He perched on the edge of the couch like he mistrusted the cushions. I stayed standing. I know things got out of hand, he began, folding his hands like a man reading from an apology script. Rosalind, and I never meant for it to happen like this. It just did. And I know you're hurt. I would be too. I shut up and let him ramble on. I wanted him to keep talking so he'd keep revealing whatever contrived lines he'd practiced in some overpriced loft mirror. He went on. What's done is done. I care about Rosalind deeply, and I want to be respectful of whatever comes next between the two of you. That was the moment I couldn't stay. I couldn't help it. Respectful, I repeated slowly. You slept with my wife while sending memes about how pathetic I was. You let her use me as cover while you sneaked around like kids cheating on a group assignment. And now you want to be respectful. A tiny twitch crossed his face, the faint bruise of wounded pride. I'm just trying to avoid this getting messy, he said carefully. There it was, the truth. He hadn't come to apologize. He'd come to limit the fallout. He was worried about consequences for himself, not about me. I closed the distance between us, not threatening, just steady. Don't worry, Grant. I'm not going to key your car. I'm not going to email your clients. I'm not going to show up at your office. That's not me, I said quietly. His shoulders visibly relaxed, a small, relieved exhale. Too early, I added, voice low. But I'll tell you this. There's a difference between staying quiet and being invisible. I was quiet. I was kind. I was consistent. You mistook that for weakness. Rosalind did too. But you both forgot one thing people like me have that you never will. He cocked his head, curious. Patience, I said. Then I handed him a plain manila envelope. No theatrics, nothing flashy, just a neat stack of printed screenshots. Their chats, timelines, travel plans, her complaints about him, comparisons that didn't flatter him, things he clearly hadn't seen. This is where you realize she lied to you too, I told him. And that she always will. He opened the envelope. Color drained from his face as though paint were bleeding away. He didn't argue. He folded the papers back up, stood, and walked to the door like a man stunned by being outmaneuvered. Before he left, he paused and asked, "What are you going to do with all of this?" I smiled. Not cruel, just exhausted. I haven't decided yet. That's the advantage of being underestimated. I closed the door with a soft click, not a slam. That night Rosalind messaged me 5 times. The tone had changed, less rage, more confusion and fear. "What did you tell him?" "Ellis, please. Just tell me what you're doing. What do you want?" But the truth was I didn't want anything from her anymore. For the first time in our marriage, she was the one waiting on me. By Monday, silence wasn't my weakness. It became her punishment. I ignored her new messages. I think that unsettled her more than a fight would have. She expected the old Ellis who apologized to keep the peace. Instead, I held the tension and let her sit in it alone. She tried to flip the script. On Tuesday morning, a message arrived from Devin, someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly a year. "I know things are complicated," it read, "but Rosalind is hurting. You two need to talk. Be adults." I laughed bitterly at the word adults. Adults don't lie, cheat, and humiliate their partner in public. Adults don't gaslight while sneaking into hotel rooms with their boss. Worse, Rosalind was already shaping the story around my reaction instead of her betrayal. It wasn't about the affair anymore. It was about how I was prolonging things, how I was creating drama, how I could have simply let her go quietly. She had no idea what was coming next. On Wednesday, I got a message from an unknown man, Aaron Lattimore. I almost ignored it, thinking spam, but the subject line grabbed me. "We need to talk about Rosalind. I knew her before you did." That piqued my interest. His note was simple. He didn't want revenge or a weird alliance, just to give me the full picture. He left a number. I waited 2 hours before calling, pacing Mallory's hallway until curiosity won. When he answered, his voice was calm and steady in a way that felt like he was consoling me. "I know this is awkward," he said, "but I figured you deserved the whole story. I was married to Rosalind before you." My knees buckled. "She never told me she was married?" I asked, stunned. "I'm not surprised," he replied, then unfolded everything. They married young, barely out of college, and it lasted under 3 years. He described emotional absences, manipulation, and eventually an affair with a colleague. Sound familiar? "She rewrites reality," Aaron said. "If she can't twist the story, she changes the audience. New friends, new job, new image. You probably never met anyone from her past before you." It clicked. I hadn't met her previous circle. I'd assumed geography explained it. I muttered that she'd told me I was too sensitive, too needy, too passive. She projects guilt and calls it criticism. We talked for an hour. By the end, I wasn't angry so much as numb. Not because I was surprised, but because a warped relief settled over me. I wasn't imagining things. This pattern predated me. Then Aaron said something that hit hardest. "She doesn't implode all at once. She self-destructs slowly and makes sure someone else is holding the match when it burns." He paused. "But now that you know, you can decide not to be her next fire." When the call ended, I sat in silence. Mallory came in, saw my face, and wordlessly handed me a mug of tea and sat beside me. I didn't drink. That night I left a single note on Rosalind's door. It didn't beg or accuse. It simply read, "The man you pretended I was is gone. The man you forgot I could be is watching now." I didn't need her to understand it. I needed to believe it myself. And at last I did. It was Friday, just after 3 p.m. when she came back. I was in Mallory's kitchen trying to focus on a book when 2 car doors slammed in quick succession, one right after the other, like someone had rushed to follow. I glanced out and felt my stomach drop. Rosalind strode up the path, and trailing behind her, trying too hard to look composed, was Grant. Mallory was still at work, so the house held only me. I'm not sure what I expected from her after everything. Maybe distance, maybe silence, a politely worded email. What I didn't expect was a full-blown visit dressed in fake. She arrived with the kind of urgency that expected the world to bend around her. And she knocked like she owned the place. 3 sharp taps, no hesitation. I cracked the door only halfway. "Ellis," she said, already irritated, acting as if I'd kept her waiting. Grant hovered a few steps behind her, hands jammed into his pockets, looking uncomfortable. "We need to talk," she said, her voice sharper than it needed to be for a private conversation. I glanced past her at Grant. "Then why bring an audience?" I asked. "I brought him because this concerns him too," she snapped. "You've been stirring things up. You gave him messages that weren't his business, and now you're trying to drag the past into something that doesn't concern you anymore." I blinked. "Doesn't concern me?" I repeated. "You mean the affair? The humiliation? The years of manipulation? Yeah, I guess you're right. Silly me for assuming I had a seat at the table I was paying for." Rosalind stepped forward, but I didn't open the door any wider. I wasn't afraid. I just didn't want her inside my sister's space. "I know you spoke to Aaron," she said, eyes narrowing. So she knew. In that moment I realized this wasn't about reconciliation or damage control. It was about containment. She was trying to keep the story she'd fed Grant intact now that the cracks were widening faster than she could mend them. "You lied to him too, didn't you?" I asked, turning to Grant. "She told you I was cold, passive, disconnected. That she had no choice but to look elsewhere for intimacy. Right." Grant said nothing at first, his silence shouted. "She told me you were cruel," he mumbled finally, avoiding my gaze. I nodded slowly. "Of course she did." Rosalind rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Ellis. Stop playing the martyr. You think just because you're quiet and self-pitying you get to be the victim." I opened the door enough to step out and closed it behind me. I didn't want her energy in Mallory's house. I stood on the porch facing them both, calm in a way that made even Rosalind pause. "You know the difference between me and you?" I said. "I feel guilt. You feel inconvenience." She scoffed. "That's ridiculous." I turned to Grant. "You think she loves you?" I thought the same once. The truth is, she only loves the version of you you create in the moment. When you stop feeding that version, she'll do to you what she did to me and what she did to Aaron before either of us. Grant looked at her, just for a second, and something shifted, the smallest seed of doubt. Rosalind saw it too. She stepped between us as if protecting something fragile, but she wasn't protecting him. She was protecting the illusion. "Let's go," she snapped, grabbing his arm. He hesitated. "Is it true what he said about Aaron?" he asked. Rosalind's face went blank. Her tell when she hadn't conjured a lie fast enough. She blinked, opened her mouth, closed it, and finally exhaled shakily. "It's not relevant," she said, which was hardly a denial. We all knew what that meant. She stormed back to the car. Grant followed more slowly now. Before getting in, he glanced back at me. "I don't know what this is between you two," he said, "but I didn't sign up for it." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He was already coming apart, and she knew it. They drove off, and I felt a weight in my chest begin to shift. Not from victory, but because for once she hadn't won. She tried one more move. The following Sunday, nearly a week later, Rosalind sent a long, winding email, an apology threaded with sentimental breadcrumbs designed to seem sincere. She wrote about our history, how she lost sight of who we were, how people change unintentionally. She said Grant had taken space to process things, and she wasn't sure where they stood. She said she missed the us that laughed at nothing and made grilled cheese at 1 in the morning, and wondered if we could talk, just to understand where it all broke. I didn't need to understand anymore. That need to make sense of someone who had never been honest had been the thing that hurt me the most. I didn't reply. Instead, I wrote myself a note, a private letter folded into my journal, the kind that begins and ends with "finally." For the first time in years, I meant the word. The next day I went home, not to her, but to myself. Mallory helped me move into an apartment across town. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic. Just mine. Sunlight through the blinds, a chip table I found secondhand that felt more honest than anything I'd shared with Rosalind in 3 years. I even adopted a senior rescue cat. His name's Button. He likes jazz and refuses to tolerate a less than full food bowl. We're doing fine. And oddly, I don't hate her anymore. If she hadn't pushed me away in public, I might never have seen how often she'd been dismantling me in private. She didn't simply end our marriage. She released me from a version of myself that equated quiet with kindness, patience with acceptance, survival with love. What I discovered on the other side was peace. The kind that doesn't hinge on anyone else recognizing your worth, because you finally do. So to anyone watching this on Reddit Confessions, here's something I want you to take away. Closure doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives in an empty room, a long breath, and the quiet realization that you're still standing, and they no longer get to tell your story. What's the moment in your life when everything changed? When someone revealed who they truly were, and you finally walked away? Share it in the comments. Your story might be the nudge someone else needs to find strength. If this hit home, remember you're on Reddit Confessions, where real stories remind us healing isn't always loud, but it always matters. Thanks for listening.